As Munich Security Conference 2025 came to an end, the general outcome shifted toward ways to resolve conflict in Middle East and ending the war in Ukraine. Rahmat Idris spoke with a Middle East expert, Salman Sheikh. Now let's have a look.
Well, Mr. Salman Sheikh, founder and CEO of Sheikh's Group, thank you very much for your time here on TVR. Well, on to my first question to you. In your opinion, what are the main drivers of Donald Trump's proposals in relocating Gaza, the Palestinians outside of the regions, and what are the possible way of the stakeholders perceive these proposals?
President Donald Trump came into the international arena promising peace, both on Europe and with regards to the Middle East. And of course, he had the Gaza conflict, which has been raging now for more than 2 years. And on the eve of it, of course, we started to see the implementation of a ceasefire in Gaza. But what he's doing is something that has met with very, very stiff resistance. The Arab world, and I think the Muslim world, is up in arms about his plan for forced displacement of Palestinians. Now, he's rolled that back by talking about voluntary movement of Gazans out of Gaza. And his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is now saying, well, if the Arab countries have a better plan, that they should now present it. So I think that's where the activity is right now.
Well, in your opinion, what are the legal, politics, and geopolitical challenges that this proposal will face, particularly when it comes to the U.S. and their allies?
Well, the Gaza Riviera plan that President Trump has suggested is in fact illegal. You can't expect 2 million people to move out of their territory. Now, they talk about it being voluntary, but that will only come about. And, you know, I lived in Gaza. I work for the United Nations. And I know that Palestinians in Gaza will not move. You see even now, even amongst the rubble, particularly in northern Gaza, Palestinians have moved back. And where they can find flat earth, have put tents. So what we are effectively talking about is further besieging and making impossible conditions for Palestinians, Gazans, to stay. Now, that has thrown down the gauntlet to Arab and Muslim countries, and particularly, I think what we'll see on the 21st of this month in Riyadh is a meeting of the Arab Quintet group, which includes, of course, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, as well as Egypt and Jordan. And then later on, at the end of the month, an extraordinary meeting of the Arab Summit, which is largely going to be about how you present alternative plans for the reconstruction of Gaza, as well as for its security and safety.
And how do you think this proposal will have its impact and help shape the dynamics in the regions when it comes to Israel, Hamas, and the Gulf? Particularly, Hezbollah has also been a part of this entire ordeal in the Middle East.
Well, if it's enacted, you know, you are effectively considering the redrawing of maps in the Arab world. You are likely to see extreme pressure on immediate neighboring countries to Israel, as well as Israel taking more larger pieces of land. This Israeli government is more and more being seen as one that is led by an extremist cohort which is interested in the expansion of Israel. Now, if that happens, I think, you know, the results are unpredictable. We are likely to see further displacements, not just in the in Gaza, but in the West Bank, and perhaps beyond that in other Arab states as well. When it comes to Hamas and Hezbollah, they, of course, classify themselves as resistance movements. Israel and the West, and even the United States, United Nations has called them terrorist organizations. What I'm clear is that even though we've seen a weakening of Hezbollah and Hamas in Lebanon and in Gaza respectively, we are likely to see the emergence of other resistance movements because you will not see a stable environment. In fact, you won't see greater security for Israel. You're likely to see another cycle of violence and perhaps even more intensive violence in the future.
How are the broader Muslims world responding to these proposals, in particular the coordinated rejections coming in from Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Iran and Turkey, for a matter of fact?
Well, the proposal, and I think it's good to mention it as a proposal, I don't see it as a workable, practical plan that President Trump has suggested, is one that, yes, will upend relationships. Now, here, let me just mention particularly the key role of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia in many ways stands at the epicenter of dialogue right now, along with other Gulf states like Qatar and Egypt, who are part of the dialogues that are taking place. As I said, the international system very much is now being reduced to blocks, whereas Europe, whether it's the Middle East or whether it's other parts of the world. What happens now in these discussions in Saudi Arabia in the days ahead will perhaps determine whether old alliances are viable, whether, for example, the Europe-United States relationship can continue, the transatlantic relationship, which Munich and the Munich conferences has discussed and celebrated over the years, are still viable ways of looking at the world today.
How do you think the proposal will also impact the region of Southeast Asia, in particular when it comes to ASEAN and its foreign policies and regional security?
Well, we are seeing overall now, and here in Munich, we've heard it from American leaders, Europeans, and of course Arab leaders, how we are at a moment in time where history seems to be being made. That means old alliances, old relationships are not just being frayed, but are being talked about in different ways. We're now hearing again the idea of spheres of influences for big powers, where might is right and where other countries have to fall in line. For Southeast Asia, they won't be immune from these kinds of geopolitical changes, where the United States, Russia and China are going to try and carve out their spheres of influence. We need a new multilateralism, where countries like Indonesia can play the role in a modern international system, a reformed international system, which is more democratic, which is more receptive to the wishes of all people, including those in Southeast Asia itself.
Will this proposal also impact the U.S. and its relations to the global alliances, and in particular its relations with Russia, China and other stakeholders, and also when it comes to global securities as well?
The broader Arab and Muslim world has reacted badly to this. In particular, the Arab states immediately involved in peacemaking have reacted very badly. Egypt and Jordan, which have peace treaties with Israel, have threatened to even reconsider those, because simply the emptying of Gaza or the cleaning of Gaza poses an existential threat to both those countries in terms of the population dynamics and the factors that they bring in. So what we are likely to see is a convalescing around alternative ideas, and countries like Indonesia, as a key member of the OIC, as well as some others like Pakistan, in addition to the Arab states, now are in the job of trying to present, as Marco Rubio has asked for, alternative proposals.
Well, Mr. Salman Sheikh, founder and CEO of Salman Group, thank you very much for your time here on TVR World.